Hello and welcome to my presentation about variables, be they local or global, and also constants, which are a type of variable. If you have something to hug, I strongly recommend that you go and get it. I've got Everett here. He's going to sit on my lap to provide me with comfort because I'm going to need it. Also, you should be sitting down for this presentation. This is intended for students doing VCE Computing, Units 1 and 2, and also Software Development 3 and 4. So there is our learning intention, that you can explain how local and global variables work and how constants operate. You will probably be able to remember how constants operate. There will not be questions on the exam about how they work in particular languages, but I am going to take you through this because you're using languages in your SAT and you need to know how they work. But there are, I suspect, in fact I pretty much bet my bet my reputation on the fact that it will just be at a conceptual level when it turns up on the exam. So let's have a look at it just conceptually. This big box here, this is the program in general, and these smaller boxes within the program are either functions or loops. It doesn't matter much what it is. So in the big open room, we can't print number because we don't know what number is. Within this room here, we're saying number equals 5 and it will print 5. Within this other room here, we're going to say number equals 10 and it will print 10. It still believes it's 5 in this room. It still believes that it's 10 in this room, and out in the open, it still doesn't know what number is. If I wanted to know what number was out in the big room, I actually need to define it out in the big room, or what I often say is out in the open. You will often do this at the start of your code. In some situations, GameMaker Studio in particular, you actually declare things as global variables, otherwise they behave as local variables. And I'm sure that's true in other languages as well. So in this setting, because I've declared it out in the open, number equals 1. Then when I run this function, it can actually access that, and it is going to redefine it as 5. And then when I run this code, it's going to access this thing they all have in common, this global variable, and now it's going to equal 10. So the smaller parts of the program can both access the global variable because it was declared out in the open, and they can modify it. But let's see how it works in practice in the languages, because it's a doozy. Okay, in Python, I am declaring my counter equals 0. So because I'm declaring it out in the open, it's at the start and it's not within any functions or loops, that's global. Within here, if I want to modify it, I have to say global counter. So I actually have to say explicitly within the function, that's what I'm doing. And I'm then can actually modify it. So I'm declaring it as this global variable, and then when I modify it in this room, then it allows me to modify it. If I just want to read it, if I just want to say, hey, this is what it is, then I can just name it. So let's have a look at our visual of this. So I'm printing number. That's not going to work because it doesn't know what number is. So actually, you know what, I'm going to pause this and do a quick edit. All right, let's give this another go. So here I am in Python. Out in the open, I have not declared anything. I have not used number at all. So if I go to print it out in the open, it's going to say, hey, I don't know what this is. When I go to print the number in here, in this function, let's say, it's not going to know what it is because it hasn't been declared out in the open. In this box here, where I'm saying, hey, use the global number and redefine it, it's not going to be able to do that because the global doesn't exist. In this function here, where I'm just saying number equals 10, just in that function, that's going to be true. So actually, 3 of these things are going to break, and this one is true and okay. Let's move on to the next slide. Out in the open, globally, I'm going to declare that number equals 1. And if you hear a tone of panic in my voice, that's because I find this baffling and incomprehensible. Number equals 1, out in the open. So I can print that number out in the open in the general program. It's globally true. I can then print it within this function here, and it will draw upon the global number. So I can read it. But if I want to write it, I've got to put global in front of it and say global number equals 5, so that I'm saying, hey, I'm using that global thing out there and I want to change what it is. So once I change it to 5, it's going to be 5 out here and it's going to be 5 out here. It's changing it globally. However, if in here I just write number equals 10, it is going to, I think the word is shadowing, it's going to override it and say, nah, in this particular room, number equals 10. Never mind what's going on out there. In here, number equals 10. So everywhere else, it's going to equal 5. In this little corner of the world, it equals 10. So that's how Python works. Let's have a look at PHP. PHP, we put something out in the open, counter equals 0, so it's global. If I want to change it, I've got to declare it as global if I'm accessing it within a function. So if I didn't declare it as global, it would assume that I meant I was overriding it, I had a shadow variable, and that would be with the same name. Here it's saying, no, I want to use the global value of it, and then once you've declared it as global, you can make changes to it. The other thing that you can do is you can actually have this variable called $globals, and you can have an index of that that'll equal something. I've never seen this before in my life. So there's this kind of, it goes everywhere, global, super global array that you can stuff values into. And so here it says echo counter equals 1. Sure, why not? So it's calling increment. Yep, all right. So let's have a look at that in the diagram. So here we go. I have not declared anything in the open. So that's not going to work. That's not going to be able to print number because it doesn't know it. That's not going to be able to print number because it's calling the global value and it doesn't know it. That's going to work because that's local. It's going to say, hey, I'm using this thing called number, and it doesn't care that it doesn't exist globally, so that fella there is going to work. This fella down here is looking for global, and that isn't going to work because there is no global. So let's go to the next slide. Now there is a global of 1. So that's going to work because there's a global value of 1. That's going to work because it's calling the global 1. That's going to work, but it's going to be 5 because that's local. And that is going to redefine the global to 10 because I've said, hey, I'm in the global version of this. If you're confused, that's okay. At this point, I'm kind of confused and words are coming out of my mouth. So, JavaScript, my word, JavaScript. So, with JavaScript, again, we declare it out in the open. When we go into a function, we can modify it directly. So it's very much like the example I gave at the top of this presentation. If I say it's true out in the world, then it's true and modifiable in all of the rooms. However, if I want to use that same term locally, I can say var, and var means this will be true within this function, within all of this function. But if I only want it to be true in, say, a loop between my curly brackets or my braces, then I can use let or constant, and then it will only be true within that tiny little section there. So, for instance, between the braces there, although those braces are actually holding a function, so we'd use var. But if it were inside a loop, we could use let, and it would say that's only true in this very local context. I guess the answer to this is test and test and test. Do debugging, see what things mean. They may not mean what they mean in the context. I would say, generally speaking, and I've seen this advice again and again, if I were using functions, I'd be passing in values and I would be getting values back as a return rather than changing values within a function or a loop. That's probably a recipe for heartache if you're doing that. Okay, let's have a look at what this looks like with JavaScript. So, globally, number equals 20, so it can print that. Great. Up here, var. So var equals 5. So within this function, and drilling down in that function, number's going to equal 5. If I've just got this function and I want to print the global number, Beautiful, I can do that. I just name it as global. Here, I'm defining it just within the braces, so very locally, as 5, and that'll be true, and that won't be changed by any global changes. And here, if I just say number 10, I think that I'm changing the global variable. Let's have a quick look. I have got a page here called Idea Unpacked. You know what? I might come back to that. Let's see, you know what, you might have to look at that yourself. I don't think I've got the brain space in this presentation to work that one out. So, here's what a constant is. Now, a constant's relatively straightforward. A constant is the type of variable whose value cannot be changed after we've initially assigned it. So that's pretty easy. The main reason we do this is so that we don't go changing something. We might change GST equals 10%, pi equals 3.14, that sort of thing. We might have a name that we're using to access a database or something, and we don't want some clever clogs programmer to go and overwrite and reuse that somewhere else. Constants provide data immutably. Immutability means they can't be changed, and will help you from accidentally changing it during the program. There's an asterisk on that, and that asterisk has to do with Python. And constants are often used to prevent developers accidentally changing the value of a variable. Let's have a look at what they look like in practice. In JavaScript, a constant has uppercase snake case, and it is enforced. So if you are using it in JavaScript and the program tries to change the value of that variable, then it's not going to work. It's just going to stay the same as it was. It might throw up an error, but it's not going to be able to change it. In Python, you do the convention of the max users, but it doesn't enforce it. So if you were silly enough to go somewhere else in the program and redefine it, and by the way, it would have to be in capitals again for you to redefine it because it's case specific. So this should give you a warning, hey, I shouldn't be redefining this. But if you were to define it in 2 different places, it would change the meaning of it. So Python looks like it does constants, but it's not a true constant. PHP is a true constant. So that's how constants work. Let's have a look at what we know. Unusually, I've built the answers in here. I'm not expecting a high success rate here. I think in general, what you should know is you probably haven't committed how scope works to memory. You probably don't have a deep enough understanding. I don't have a deep enough understanding. When in doubt, look it up. These are all true and false. In Python, a variable defined inside a function can be accessed and printed from outside that function after the function has been called. I say that that's false. It is. Oh well, 1 out of 6 for me. In JavaScript, if you assign a value to a variable inside a function without using var, let, or constant, it automatically becomes a global variable. I don't think that's true. I think that it's still local because it's been declared within that function. Let's see. There you go. I'm wrong. You can declare a global variable from within a function. Man, I would never have guessed that. In PHP, a function can be directly read and modify a global variable without using the global keyword or globals array. No, I think that's false. It is false. Yeah, so you need to declare it out in the open or use this tricky globals value. Okay, 3 more questions. So I think I've got 2 out of 3 so far. In Python, you can read a global variable from inside a function without any special keywords, but you need the global keyword to modify it. Well, I think that's true. Oh, it is true. So I can read it, but if I want to change it, I have to use the global keyword. In JavaScript, variables declared with let or constant inside a block, like an if statement, are accessible outside that block. No, they're not. No, that's false. The let or constant means that it's only within that very narrow bit constrained by the braces. That is false. Okay, well, I'm feeling happy about this. I'm 4 out of 5. In all three languages, Python, JavaScript and PHP, a local variable with the same name as a global variable will override or shadow the global variable within the function scope. That's true. So, yeah, if you can use the same name, but in that space, it redefines it. Oh, there you go. I got 5 out of 6. I'm reasonably happy about that. So that's it. That's the end of that. Hopefully by now, you understand how constants work. I think a constant's pretty clear. Hopefully you understand the general idea of scope, being if you declare it out in the open, then it can be read in other places and modified in other places with a bunch of asterisks all over it, depending on the language you're working in. So good luck if you've gotten this far into the 15 minutes, and I hope you're a little bit more knowledgeable than you were when we started.